Hey, Katrina here from Scrappy Horses. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so happy you're here joining me for this video today. It's something completely different for me. I am making a vintage style brooch for a sweater or jacket or coat, and I'm making it for the challenge over at the Outlaws Anything Goes in a card-free zone. Now, this time there is a theme to follow, but it's only for fun because it is anything goes. And the theme is I'd wear that. So let's get started. I've assembled some of the things I knew I was going to need. Scissors, some pliers, needle nose pliers, as well as some jewelry pliers. I also have a scrap piece of fabric and a pattern that I drew off of the doily. I have some needles and a needle threader because I can't see to thread a needle without it. Some charms. I have some chain off of a broken necklace. I have thread. And I use different colors of thread on this. And I'll be honest, I sort of changed the project as we went along, and we'll talk more about that. I have this crocheted doily that was in my stash from a long time ago. This key that I bought in bulk, and I've used several times in journaling, actually. I've used these keys. This was another piece of broken jewelry, a pair of earrings that were broken, so I have two of those. I have some safety pins and some fabric and these little red beads. I have a large pin, and I also later off camera put on a jewelry pin on the back. All right, so starting this project, I traced that doily onto scrap paper, and I mean scrap paper, like you can see that there's writing on it. Then I went in and I pinned it and cut it out of the scrap fabric. I have a lot of old scrap fabric or fabric that I just inherited and I'm not going to use, so I just pulled a little bit of it and used that. Now I'm going to cut away one little tier or one little petal, maybe I could call it, of this doily, because that doily was going to be way too big for a pin. And I also wanted to put in some basting stitches so that I could gather the fabric. So that's exactly where I'm going to stitch. And so there I've got my long threads, and I'm pulling those to gather this a little bit. And you can see now that it's going to fit that key. Going to fit that key pretty nicely. So here I am with my doily, and I've got my fingers crossed because I've got 2 or 3 of these in my stash, but I didn't really want to waste them, obviously. So that's the reason I did it on scrap fabric first. So I'm going to put this together and I'm going to go stitch it. I did. I left in nice long threads. This time I sewed it with white. I did it with blue before so you could see that stitching on the other piece. I'm now sort of laying the key out, and I'm going to put the little piece, the little dangle piece on there just to kind of get an idea of what this is going to look like and if I like the size. And I've decided that, yes, I think it is going to work. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I tie off my gathering threads. Now what I did is I basted these in with my sewing machine. You could also baste by hand if you wanted to. And then what I did is I left my threads very, very long, and I just tie them off. That way my gathering will stay and the threads won't come out. And I did this to both sides, where I started stitching and where I ended the stitching. I'm going to go ahead and put my jump ring on my little charm piece, and I'm going to pull out a magnifying glass. I work with a magnifying glass all the time. I work with magnifying glass when I carpet color, when I do jewelry, all the time. So I always have it close at hand. Now, I'm going to go ahead now and figure out exactly what pieces I want on this. I decided I wanted a little brown ribbon to go off on this side, and I stitched that in. Now, as I mentioned before, I put this all together, finished it, and then decided, oh, this thread is not working. I wanted a gray thread because I thought it would work best with the key. Then when I got it finished, I decided, no, that's not what I want. I want to use a brown thread on some of this and a gray thread on some of it and a white thread on some of it. So I took it all apart and I redid it, okay? So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, oh, wait, things have changed. Yes, they did. All right, so you'll see here what I'm talking about. I'm just tying off those threads. You can see here that I've got a brown thread. Once I had the ribbon stitched into place, I laid my key over and I started stitching. And on the finished piece, I did not use silver thread or gray thread. I used brown, but it does make it easier to see. So maybe for the purpose of showing you, it was better to go with the gray. I went through the chain link, then I went through the charm, and now I'm going through the red bead. Now I'm going to go in as close to the key as I can, angle my needle downward behind the key, and pull tight. So sorry I got out of frame there. I was having trouble stitching and getting my thread caught, and I apologize for that. Off camera, I put my jump ring onto the key just using a pair of pliers. I just opened it up, put it on around the key, and then closed it back up with my pliers. I'm coming in now, and I'm stitching in the part of the key that goes into the keyhole. Now, this particular one had a hole in that part, so I'm stitching through that hole. The thread will not show because this is where I'm going to attach the other side of my chain. But I needed to somehow adhere my key onto the doily so it would stay on and it wouldn't droop on that end. So I am using a stitching method here. Now I also put a little bit of fabric tack behind that key. All right, I don't know if I showed that on the video or not, but I did. I used a little tiny bit of fabric tack. My thread was too short to knot this off in a traditional way, so I'm going to go ahead and just tie a hand knot in here. I normally would loop it around and go through the loop to tie it off. All right, so now I'm going to come in with my pliers and my jump ring, and I'm going to get a little bit of this chain, okay? I'm going to get that through one of those little itty bitty links, and then I'm going to come up and I'm going to attach it into that hole, or that little place that's the little cross that is cut out of my key. So my chain is a little bit too long, so I'm just cutting it off here. This just happens to be the pliers that came with my the system for cinching, my cinch system for like books and planners and such. And so I'm just using that to cut this metal. So again, my hand is in a poor position. I am so sorry. I'm not used to doing this kind of work on camera. I'm usually doing paper crafting, so I need to get used to this. But what I did is I just, again, stuck it through there and then went ahead and the jump ring, and then put the jump ring through. And there's a close-up of that so you can see how that worked. I thought it would be fun to finish off this piece with a display sort of board or packaging. So I cut a piece of cardstock, or cereal box actually, and I left the fold in that one part. Then I came in and I cut some cardstock from Die Cuts with a View. I think it's called Happily Ever After. It's pretty old and it's from my stash, but I really like this deep red color and I thought it would showcase the brooch quite well. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take my double score tape off, use a little fabric tack over, and then I'm going to lay my cardstock on. Now you'll notice that I cut my cardstock larger than my cereal board. I did that intentionally so that I could get it really, really close and then just trim right next to the edge, because I wanted just the slightest bit of overhang, but not much. So that's how I did that. Now I'm going to fold over the section that was already folded on my cereal board, okay, to make the box. And so I'm folding it over the opposite way, and I'm going to adhere this piece again, sticking over on both sides on this one. And I'm going to go over and trim that as soon as I get this folded over. All right, so you can see that I left a little bit of the edge there. And now I have cut away the excess paper, and now I'm going to fold it over, adhere it with my double score tape, and again, just a little bit of fabric tack. Now, the next thing I decided was, well, this is really fun. This is looking quite pretty, and I put my brooch on top of it, and it looked great. But then the header was so plain, and I thought, well, I think I'm just going to make a header for my brooch for my display. And so I decided that I'd just make a little piece that said Vintage Brooch by ScrappyHorses. So that's what I decided to do. All right, well, this concludes my video. I will be the first to admit that my videography skills on this one left a little to be desired. But it's fun to kind of stretch out and try something new. And I did like the way the brooch turned out, and I wanted to share the ideas that I had with you. And maybe seeing me try something new will inspire you to do the same. Any comments on this video, good or bad, I'm happy to read. And again, I thank you for your time, and I'll catch up with you in the next video. Bye.